Alright, guys, welcome to DOA6 Dragon Guide. After many months of delay, I do deeply have to apologize about that. But very long story short, I had an idea of doing the Dragon Guide basically just like the old one, the old DOA5 one, if you've seen that. And I had my doubts around that time. I don't know if I fully liked the format. I felt it was a little convoluted, it was a very long video. So finding specific information and points of interest might have been a little bit difficult. So I had my doubts. But then my freaking computer decided to die at some point, or well, the hard drive did, and that basically just gave me the answers that I needed. So I wasn't able to continue with that version of the project. I was like, you know what, I'm gonna try a different format. So this is basically what we're doing right now. So the way this is gonna work is that these are going to be a series of more bite-sized condensed videos. They're going to be purely focused on a specific subject. So you can tell by the title of this video that we're going to be covering for the most part the central idea and the playstyle for Jann Lee as a character, everything related to his neutral and all that stuff. So yeah, with that introduction, let's just get right into it. Alright, so from a very general standpoint, Jann Lee as a character falls under the very common archetype of jack of all trades style character. Basically meaning that he can just do about everything that you would want him to do. Now, this is the character's, I would say, biggest strength as well as his biggest weakness. The reason for that is that he can play at any point in the screen. He can have any type of play style or mindset that you want. You can be very offensive with him, or you can play spacing in the keep out, but he doesn't particularly excel at anything. He isn't really good at everything. Maybe an exception is his wall game. His wall game is definitely above average, but in order to get there, first you need to have a good balance of your offense and your defense, right? So yeah, the character's biggest challenge is actually utilizing all the tools that you have, in the proper situations, optimizing, knowing when to go a little bit wild and when to stay safe. That's the general mindset that you should keep with this character. So now going into a little bit more of the offensive side of things, Jann Lee has a very nice tool, a very strong asset to him, and that is his XP, as a lot of you might know. His 6p, let's get the info box in here. Best box in all video games, by the way. But his 6p is 11 frames, for those not aware. That is the fastest type of mid in the game. And yeah, this immediately puts him above a lot of characters in terms of pressure and presence up close to the opponent, because not every character can contest this in terms of pure speed and damage. So yeah, it's a very strong tool to have. You also have your standard 10 frame jab. Now you have a 13 frame low, but how much just like this is a very big blessing for the character, this is also somewhat of a curse. And it's the fact that his 2p, his standard crushing disruption tool is -1 on normal hit. So this immediately means a lot of things for his game up close. Every time that you do a 2p, it's a little bit of a gamble. Of course, it doesn't always apply to all characters in all matchups. If you're playing against a very slow character, say Baz or Rido or Bayman, any of those characters, this doesn't really mean a whole bunch. You can still do your 6p, your jab even, in those situations you still have somewhat of the upper hand on the opponent, right? But against the faster characters, if you're not getting counter hits with this, is very difficult to make a proper decision afterwards, because you know most opponents and all high level opponents are gonna know this, and they're gonna take advantage of it. So you're not gonna be able to jab, because you know your jab is already going to be immediately slower than theirs. And characters with very strong jab strings like Christie or Kokoro, or you know, all those characters can take a lot of advantage for that. Even Hayabusa himself, like, you know, has a very strong jab string, and if you do 2P on him and he gets hit on normal hit, he can basically just put that on your block for free, right? So it takes a lot of like conscious effort to use this, just like regular as like a poking tool. Not like many other characters, you know, who are just neutral after it. Some are even plus, but you know, that's character specific. That's it for like his general speed and game up close. You also have your 13 frame 6K, you know, which is pretty standard. But yeah, in terms of like actually staying up close to the opponent, Jann Lee got a very good buff in DOA6 in the form of his 9P. Now his 9P is -1 by itself, which is very good, and his 14 frames it tracks. But then you cancel this into your dragon stance. You see there that I got a very rare +2. That doesn't usually happen. Yep. I don't know how that happened, but okay. You know, you'll be +1, well, which is great, because similarly to what we were talking about, and from his dragon stance, the speed of your attacks increases drastically. You can check out a future video on the dragon stance if you want more information on that. But yeah, you basically have 9 frame jab, 10 frame mid, which is actually even faster than just a regular 11 frame 6P. Yeah, 11 frame 6P. So it's very good, you know, immediately just by doing this. On terms of pure speed, you're going to be uncontested on pretty much anything, right? No character will be able to just smash through you at that point. So that is a very strong tool. You know, when you're up close or around this range, and you kind of like, you're kind of shimmying the opponent and just kind of like throw a couple of jabs in there, and then you do this, they have to deal with that, right? So in those types of situations, you know, when they learn to respect the +1, the frame advantage, even if you're farther away, let me see if I can get that. Yeah, the +2. Something you can get that +2. You can start getting a little bit sneaky with it, you know. You can start utilizing stuff like P+K, for example. You know, this has a ton of follow-ups now. You can easily bait an opponent into holding and then whiff punishing them if that's the case. You can sneak in the low. His new dragon stance low, that's also a very strong option when he starts respecting the plus cancel. You know, this is 20 frames, is borderline unreactable. So yeah, it's a very good tool to have. You know, and similar to that, his jab, like I was saying before, is hyper important for utilizing this character correctly. You know, being able to delay it like I'm doing right here. Jann Lee is now the only character in DOA5. One of the guest characters, Pi from Virtua Fighter, also had a triple jab string, but now Jann Lee is the only character that has a triple jab string, right? And this is very good, because visually you can tell, you can actually tell which one he's at. You know, there's very little difference in me doing one and then one to me doing the full string delayed. So you know, the opponent has to be aware of all the options that come from your jab. You know, you have your mids, which are really strong. You have your lows, right? Tracking, like you name it, right? So his jab string is probably his best tool when it comes to the neutral and to keeping pressure on the opponent. You know, a lot of free canceling, a lot of delaying. So yeah, very important stuff there. And then similar to that, you know, his mix-ups are definitely a weak part of the character. You don't really have a lot of tools to mix up the opponent, to open them up or like keep them guessing, you know. Or your lows are very reactable and very punishable as well. So you know, you're going to be relying a lot on like tick throwing and counter hits. Counter hits are very important with this character. So yeah, he can, like I was saying in the intro, he can basically play offense as well as he can play spacing, but you're not going to be able to easily open up an opponent, like I was saying, because his offense is not his strongest suit. So you're gonna have to rely on counter hits. You're gonna have to rely on, you know, making the opponent frustrated, want to press buttons or try to crush you or stuff like that, right? So in terms of like the offensive part of his game plan, I'd say those are the basics, the most important things to keep in mind. So now for the more defensive side of things. So like I was saying, a lot of matches you're going to be juggling between your spacing game and your up close pressure game, because they kind of like each directly lead into each other. For example, if you're up close and you get a launcher, or you know, just like a raw like strong hit, B+K for example, you're going to immediately reset the neutral. That's one of the things that happens with Jann Lee, right? Is that you get a combo, or you know, or one of your raw like strong hits that like that, right? The main things that make him a striker, or a striker hybrid, I guess, you're immediately going to reset the neutral right here. I wouldn't say, sometimes it is, but I wouldn't say it's recommended that you just directly run after the opponent when something like that happens. Again, you have to check and be aware of your options, right? So if you have a little bit of a life lead, it might be better to start enforcing your defensive game. So like I said, your combos and your cash outs with your strong attacks are going to directly lead into the spacing game, and then your spacing game is going to lead into more pressure and cash outs in terms of combos and stuff like that, right? You're going to get those whiff punishes, you know, you're going to run in on the opponent and start like putting jabs on them, stuff like that. So in terms of spacing, Jann Lee has a lot of strong tools in his arsenal. You have the classic 5K and 3K. These are both probably your best tools, not on their own, but because of their follow-ups, right? These are basically the essentials when it comes to playing the spacing game with Jann Lee. They have a shit ton of range, easily with punish anything. They're delayable. They have other types of follow-ups. So yeah, they're very strong in the neutral and in the spacing game. Playing keep out as well, you know, you put this on the block of the opponent, and while they're highly minus, there's nothing that the opponent can really do to kind of gain on you. You know, a very quick backdash into a B+K can whiff punish a lot of their attempts if they don't really know how to approach your neutral. So it's very strong. You have your 6 B+K as well. It's a very strong all-around whiff punish tool. You know, it's 20 frames, so you can whiff punish and kind of snipe things, you know, if you're playing footsies. You have your 7P, which I personally like a lot. You know, it's a little bit of a sway jab, so this automatically puts you outside of the range of a lot of effective attacks. In this range, like say I was playing another Jann Lee, right? And they do something like 6K, for example. And I do this, I'm immediately being put outside of the range of a move like that, right? A lot of characters in this game also make their approach in the neutral with high attacks, so this is very strong for that. And of course it leads into your jab string, which we will talk about shortly. And then probably my favorite neutral tool, you guys know, 4PP, the classic. So yeah, I love this move because of its sheer utility and all the variations that it has and how many forms you can use it, basically for everything really. Now with the most recent patch to Jann Lee, you can even use it in combos very optimally. So yeah, it's just a great move overall. It's probably not his best move, but it is certainly my favorite move. So you can use this in neutral as well. Covers a lot of range, and the main thing about it is that while being the label, the character just basically becomes a walking hitbox, right? Anything that comes in contact with you, or you know, that is whiffed at any point that's near you, will basically get hit, right? Or intercepted. That is very strong, as it will most of the time lead into an instant live stun, right? So it is very good. Of course, if you know, you have to make a little bit of a harder read, or you have some health to spare, you know, you can delay it a lot. Sorry, a little bit of interruption there, but yeah, basically when you have to make a little bit of a hard read, you can let the whole thing rip, right? It can be beneficial sometimes, but yeah, this is just a general, just great tool. You know, both up close to keep the opponent guessing. You know, if they start respecting this, you can cancel it, or you can free cancel it into a throw or something like that. You know, they have to always respect this move simply because of all the follow-ups, and simply because of just how insanely active it is, right? So very strong tool. You then of course have your 66k. You know, this is going to be your main with punish tool along P plus K. From basically when you just see like a big move, or you know, they whiff something big in front of you, just wham, right? Just push them away. And these two are your main forms of keep out. Not so much spacing, but keep out. When you have the life lead and you're trying to protect it, you know, make it bigger, frustrate the opponent, and have them like be more reckless on their approach to you. These are the two main moves they're going to want to utilize for that. So yeah, as you can see, he has a lot and very strong tools to play the neutral and to outplay the opponents in the spacing game, right? If the spacing game is not your strong suit and you're fighting against a talented Jann Lee player, you're gonna have a bad time. So yeah, in terms of defensive options, this character is very good. Alright, so now going to more specific, more generalized aspects of the character, we're going to cover his throw game very quick. So his throw game is mostly unchanged from DOA5, but he did receive a few new additions. They're honestly pretty good. So you know, his 60 is still the same as in DOA5, they didn't change it back. The opponent has the option to tech out of this. Yeah, just sideways for example. So you know, your follow-ups afterwards are not guaranteed, so you always have to keep that in mind. But then, as a very general buff, you have a back throw now, right? So this is immediately a very strong change for him. As you can see right there, it's 10 frames. So now you have axes again. He used to have in previous games, but they took it away in DOA5. But now you have another strong punish option. So before, you know, things that were not quite in the 12 frame range or minus 12 range, you had to just set, for example, 60 punish, right? And that sucked. It was really bad. So now you have more of a lease on unsafe characters, like say Kasumi for example, that are quite unsafe. But you can't just simply like do your 12 frame throw each time. So now you have this, and it is a very good throw. Bad right there, the knockdown is untaggable. They have to get up like that every time. This can lead to some interesting like ground game options. Your low jab will always hit after that, so it's a strong option. Low kick, 1P, all of that will hit after a successful back throw. So it's very important to keep in mind. And similar to that, you know, it puts you in the perfect range where you can just kind of like shimmy around this area. And if they do a wake up kick, I mean, it's just free. You can just whiff punish it whatever you want, whichever way that you want. So yeah, I generally really love this throw. That allows you to punish things that you couldn't before, or at least not as optimally, making the opponent more wary. It has a wall version as well, which is very good. Just take it to a wall real quick. there. It does really good damage, like very decent damage on high counter as well. The wall version, that's pretty damn good, and just normally 83. It's really not bad. So yeah, fantastic addition to his repertoire in terms of his throw game. Automatically makes it a lot better. And then for a little bit of a change, so before, this was your all-purpose throw, but if you were a little bit more advanced or you were really good at chain throws, you could utilize his chain throw right here, bulldogging headlock, and it would do more damage than that throw. Now you see that does 89, right? Oh yeah. This actually doesn't do as much as quarter circle back throw. So it's a little bit of an odd change. They maybe forgot to change the values on that throw. But yeah, sadly, there's basically no reason for you to ever do the bulldogging headlock anymore. I would love it in a future revision of the game that would make this an offensive hold like it was in DOA4. It would be fantastic. You know, maybe they could make it 17 frames like in DOA5. But yeah, basically just the main change to his throw game is back throw, but it is very good on its own. You know, 6T at the wall is still gross. If you want more information on that, there will be another future video on the wall game as well, so check that out for all the nasty things you can do to the opponent with this throw. But anyway, yeah, his throw game received a slight tweak, but actually helps him a lot in the grander scheme of things. So now for the companion mechanic that throws in this game, we got holds. So Jann Lee's hold game is pretty standard for the most part, but he has 2 exceptions to his rule, well, technically 3. So, you know, starting with his mid-punch hold. You know this boy. If you play that character, you love it. Yeah, this hold got buffed quite a lot, and not so much in the form of the character itself, but the general mechanics. So, you know, for a general breakdown, the double bind will put the opponent in a state of 24 frames of advantage for you. Now, a very interesting thing here is that this is not like the Dragon Gunner, for example. So you know that the Dragon Gunner gives you a straight plus 25, and that is raw. The opponent cannot do anything until there's 25 frames. The mid-punch hold is not quite like that. It says there's 24 frames of advantage there, but this is actually considered a stun status. So what this means is that the opponent can actually critical hold out of it way before the 24 frames actually happen, right? So the way that this works is that anything up to 16 frames, yes, I believe, yes, 16 frames is guaranteed, right? So you have a plethora of options to utilize that, but anything beyond that is not guaranteed. The opponent has the option to hold it. They can, you know, they can panic low hold if they want. So yeah, you gotta keep that in mind. So you know, you have a lot of strong tools. You have your 3P if you want a quick like lift stun, you know, to start your pressure. You know, try to bait them to hold, stuff like that. You have 6H plus K for similar purposes. You know, 4 PP as we were saying, you know, because it's 16 frames, that's the max that you can do. But the best option, the strongest option out of this is 7K. Now you could do this in DOA5 as well. It basically functions as a free launcher, but remember what I said when I was talking about this hold. Because this is the state is treated as a stun state. You know how DOA6 basically normalized the launch heights on moves to just whether you are on normal hit or whether you're in a stun. Oop. Right? So that basically applies to this. So every time that you're launching with 7k after a mid-punch hold, you're getting the max height that you can out of the launcher, which is crazy because you get access to all your optimal juggles, you know, all the combos. So yeah, this is very strong. I mean, just from this on its own, with the new, I can't believe I messed that up. Ignore that happened. You know, with the new combo routes available to Jann Lee, you know, you get a free 62 points of damage from a mid-punch hold, which is ridiculous. You can convert into your bound. It is just out of control, right? So, it is very strong for the character on a general senses, because, you know, the opponent is going to be a lot more scared, a lot more conscious about throwing mid-punches on you. Especially if they're a character like, you know, like in the Mirror or Christie, who relies a lot on those mid punches. You know, it's scary. It's scary to throw them against Jann Lee, because you get hit with one of these and you're gonna lose a lot of damage, a lot of momentum. So it is very strong for that. Now going into the high kick hold, the Trace Gunner. This is basically, for intents and purposes, just a Dragon Gunner in hold form. It does have a slight difference though. This gives you plus 24 advantage, while the Dragon Gunner gives you 25. But the Trace Gunner actually leaves you slightly closer to the opponent. So when you're going, for example, for a Dragon Gunner follow-up, you have to input a little bit of a micro dash, right? But with the Trace Gunner, you can just dial it in, and it gives you the same result, right? So it's a little bit easier to react, you know, to not mess up. So it's still pretty good. I mean, it's his free Dragon Gunner. Like, come on, it's really good. So yeah, Jann Lee's whole game not changed a lot, but the system mechanics changed it quite a bit, and for the better. So now we're gonna do a little bit of a side section here, kind of like you know, separate thing here outside of what we were just talking about. Just a special mention basically, and this is about two moves that it's not an exaggeration to say that they give a little bit of the character the personality that it has, and you probably know what I'm talking about, and it's the Dragon Gunner and the Dragon Kick, the boys. So why I'm doing this is that because these are like such detrimental and important moves to the game, you know, you kind of have to like basically have a separate thing for both of them. So, you know, starting with the Dragon Gunner, you know it. Again, if you play a character, you love it, and if you don't, you hate it. But yeah, basically one of the most infamous moves in all of the series. The reason why people hate Jann Lee so much online, basically. I can't really blame them. But yeah, as we were saying, plus 25. Oh, I still have these reactions on. Plus 25 after a successful hit. You can basically just do whatever you want to the opponent after that. There are some favorable options that players normally use. You have 6H plus K for the feint stun. You have P6P. You have 7K. You know, you have a lot of options. You have 8P as well, which is a more recently discovered version. If you want more info on that, there will be a tech video as well coming up. It's very big brain, so be sure to watch that if you want more info on that. But yeah, basically you have a free mix-up option on the opponent whenever you land the Dragon Gunner. Now, this has led to a few misconceptions about the move. For one, I feel that this is not a very adequate move in the current meta, and specifically to how good players have gotten dealing with it. So, you know, for starters, it is highly reactable. It is 23 frames. This move has been nerfed to the ground, probably the most nerfed move in the history of the game. I think every single game it gets revision, it gets worse. So yeah, now it only does 10 points of damage on a successful normal hit. And yeah, if you base your playstyle around the Dragon Gunner a lot, you're going to be very easily read. Your approach and your offense is going to hold no meaning to the opponent, basically. So yeah, this is not a move that you rely on, basically. And another thing is that you can't really see this move as a, I guess you could say, comeback mechanic. That's something that a lot of people do. Even myself sometimes, I'm guilty of this. But you know, you're getting outplayed, the opponent is just spotting you, you know, moving spacing up close, and you're like, I have to gunner them. This is the only way I'm gonna make this comeback, you know. Health deficit is too much, I can't be making risks, but you know, if there's one risk that I can make, is going for the gunner, right? So yeah, that is not how you should perceive the move. You should not utilize it to try and, you know, get back from the game, basically gimmick out the opponent. It's just not cool, and it will create a very bad like precedent to, you know, what tools you rely on when things are going bad with the character, basically. So yeah, I personally don't really use the gunner too much nowadays because of these reasons. I'd say that the move should be treated as a resource, basically. So, you know, whenever you land a Dragon Gunner with Jann Lee on the opponent, you have to keep a little bit of a mental note, right? So where you used it, how you used it, for what purpose you used it, and then kind of like try not to use it in that context again, if that makes any sense. So yeah, you know, you can try and poke with it, you know, try and be funny with it, stuff like that. But yeah, use this to kind of like, if it'll close you out the game, go for it. You know, if you're by the wall, it is very scary being against the wall with this character, or against this character, because of things like that. You know, you can very easily be wall splatted for a lot of damage, or you can be thrown or Dragon Gunnered, right? So utilize that stuff to your advantage. Basically condition the opponent and make the fear and the awareness of the Dragon Gunner into a strength, because it is usually a weakness. So that's the way you should utilize the move, in my opinion. And I'm going into the Dragon Kick. It's a little bit of a similar subject. So the Dragon Kick, I would say it's about equally as gimmicky as the Dragon Gunner. It is also highly reactive, even more so than the Dragon Gunner. Is 25 frames, so you know, very reactable. But I would say that the Dragon Kick actually has a lot more practical use than the Gunner, and the reason for this is that if you're playing the neutral, and if you have life lead or a health deficit, you know, whatever the situation may be, and you throw one of these out, you can get a lot of information on the opponent, on the current mindset of the opponent. You know, whether they duck it on reaction, right? They're kind of looking for it. They know that you're known for using Dragon Kicks a lot. You know, they're looking for it and waiting for the chance to punish it. Or if they start to like slip up, you know, then they sidestep it, or they don't punish it even though they dodged it, you know, stuff like that. It can give you a lot of information on the opponent, you know. Keep them honest, basically, and be like, okay, I'm gonna throw a Dragon Kick right now, are you paying attention or not, right? So it's a way of keeping the opponent aware, and also like waking them up if they're getting a little bit sloppy, right? But that's in turn like messing you up. So yeah, I'd say it's a very strong tool for that. Most recently I've been using it in situations when I'm up close, because it is not as reactable up close, because you're of course not going to be running the distance, so visually it's not as readable, and you have the chance of getting that juicy close hit, right? So that's what I would say is a more optimal use of the Dragon Kick nowadays. And again, if you just want to test out the opponent, and see in what kind of state they are, if they're willing to play a defensive game with you, you know, or they're, you know, they also want to play the keep out game, or are they just kind of like frustrated and trying to find a way in. You know, it can give you a lot of information. So I'd say that that's probably the best use for the dragon kick, as a move, not so much as a gimmick. So now for a little bit of I guess some closing thoughts on what we were just talking about. You know, this is more so just a compendium of like the tools that you should use in the neutral, how you should approach the game plan with the character, you know. But now kind of like going into like the more theoretical, I guess, aspects of the character's neutral. You know, like I was saying at the beginning, the character can play basically any playstyle that you want him to. But one thing that you have to kind of understand is let's get this info box out of here, is a little bit more of the mentality of the character, basically. How you have to keep switching gears in matchups, basically. How you have to be playing very defensive at some point and then rush in and take the opponent, you know, for a loop. Basically make yourself unreadable, make your approach not very reactable. You know, like here in the spacing game, for example, you know, the type of people that like you're doing this, for example, or this, and they're just like, they become so accustomed to it that they start holding mid kick in neutral. You know the type. So, you know, stuff like that. You have to know how to get in the mentality of those people, you know, and outplay them. You're doing this a lot, basically. You know, so you have to kind of like play by the rules and like the basic fundamentals of spacing and footsies, you know, like taking it to a 2D plane, for example. So like, let's say that these are like Jann Lee's fireballs, right? And the opponent is ready to like parry them or jump over them. So next time you just throw out a jab, right? So you're shimmying around, you're kind of like feeling out the opponent, what they're doing, how they're approaching you. So, you know, you start poking out a little bit, you start putting out some buttons, and then you can see that they start having a reaction to it, right? And they start to approach you or like stay a little bit back, waiting for you to slip up or get closer yourself. So, you know, that's kind of like the stuff that you do. You know, they start holding, so like you throw off their timing right, you throw a couple of these, and then just a random jab, and then run in, right? Things like that. You have to really break it down to the basics and the core fundamentals of DOA to be really strong and really optimal with this character. That's the way that I feel, at least. So yeah, I mean, that's basically the main reason why I love this character so much. You know, is that you can basically just do everything, play how you want, and not so much just abuse very optimal, very strong tools specifically set for an objective. You just kind of have to adapt your general play style to really outplay and really just beat the opponent, right? In both the psychological and like gameplay notion, right? So yeah, this character is very easy to pick up, you know, in theory, but again, he's one of those characters very easy to pick up but very hard to master, you know, and it's very rewarding. I seriously recommend Jann Lee if you're looking for that type of you know, fundamental, very like grounded base style of play, right? But again, if you're playing online, you're just going nuts with the gimmicks, and you know, you do you. But yeah, that's basically more so in terms of like the on paper stuff for the character. So guys, I think that is going to be it for this section, this part of the Dragon Guide, I guess. Like I said, this is just more of a general breakdown of the core mechanics, of core fundamentals of the character, you know. There will be more videos covering more in-depth aspects of the game and of the character. the stuff like the wall game, the tech, all that type of stuff. So yeah, it was very fun attempting this style of format. Let me know if you guys found it cool, if you enjoyed it, how it could improve, all that feedback is really appreciated. So yeah, for this time, again, thank you guys so much for watching, all those that stay until the end, it really means the world to me. And yeah, let me know how much it actually helped you and how the format can improve. But yeah, again, thank you all guys so much for watching. Hope to see you in the next video. Cheers.